and you can hear grunts and like aggravated voices, and then pool of blood. A pool of blood just starts pooling out the door, literally pooling out the door. And then when the cops realized kind of what was going on, it was so long after this started. Let me tell you what happened inside that cell. Welcome back to the W number. This one's about Dave Weichel. Bro, this dude is one of the most infamous characters in the Massachusetts prison system. And when I tell you that he's spent most of his life in prison, I mean it. This dude caught murders, but he's been involved in the Irish mob, I should say, in Boston with Whitey Bulger. He's been in the books. He's a notorious figure in Massachusetts. He's definitely a beast. He's strong. He can play handball as an old man. He could play basketball. He runs. He played sports all the way up until he passed away. Get into my story of the time that me and him spent together in Souy Guys Correctional Center from the time I met him until the time I left. The worst stabbing that I ever seen in my life. Dave Weichel of South Boston had a complex and challenging life marked by serious criminal convictions and a lengthy incarceration. He passed away on June 16th, 2023 at the age of 70. His early life and criminal convictions were: Dave Weichel was born in South Boston, Massachusetts, and convicted for his role in the fatal shooting during a home invasion in South Boston. According to court records, David and his brother Frederick Weichel forced their way into an apartment, and David, armed with a handgun, fired shots that resulted in death. While serving his life sentence at the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Walpole, David was involved in another incident in 1977 where he is convicted of an assault and battery on a correctional officer. This was upheld by the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. After decades in prison, Massachusetts Parole Board unanimously agreed in December 2022 that David Weichel was rehabilitated and granted him parole. He spent his final months in South Boston, where he was known to frequent local establishments and share stories with community members. One tribute from a local bartender described him as an engaging and memorable presence, often sharing wild tales and wilder words of wisdom. Without further ado, let me get into my time with Dave Weichel. So in 2008, July of 2008, I was brought to the max. When I got there, the block was locked down, first of all. All over the floor, there was this black, like it looked like soot almost, or ash that was wet, and it dried into the floor. It had this weird, like oily smell in the whole block. When I first walk in, this is what I noticed. I noticed the lights in the ceiling are smashed out. I noticed there's black, oily stuff all over the floor. It's a weird smell. The COs are kind of on edge behind the desk. Nobody is really out of their cells. When I walk into the block, everybody's locked in. It's kind of like a ghost town. When I'm wheeling the barrel and everybody can hear that barrel coming into the block, and you hear incoming, and I'm rolling it in. And that was just my introduction to the max. And someone told me what happened was this dude grabbed the CO's camel pack. He grabbed his flashlight. He ran them off the block. He grabbed the broom handle, broke all the lights out in the ceiling, popped every sprinkler on the block, crawled up in the ceiling, and when the move team came to get him, he sprayed them with the fire extinguisher. And that was my introduction to the max. That was the first day I was there. I ended up meeting Jerry Sullivan. That was the first guy I met when I got there. But when I got to my block, N2, I was rolling my card in just like I do to every other unit when you first get there. You can hear it. As soon as you hit the Sally port, you can hear that barrel coming down the hallway. You know someone's either going to N2 or P2. I was going to N2 myself, cell 19 in N2, all the way at the back of the block. Second cell all the way to the back of the block in the back left-hand side of the N2 when you're looking into the unit. The rec deck's off to the left right at the beginning of the unit, and then the cells go up like this, and it's like a long rectangle unit. Anyways, I'm wheeling my barrel all the way down the unit. I'm catching looks from people, you hear the incoming, and I'm just looking around. I hadn't really noticed anybody that I recognized at this point. I didn't say hi to anybody. I kind of just nodded my head and kept it moving. When I get to the cell that I'm going in, I look in, it's an empty cell. There's only one bunk. When I first got there was only single cells in every single cell in the whole max. There was not one double cell to be had. And to tell you the truth, nobody could have fathomed that ever happening, them doubling up the max. So when I look into the cell, I see there's a bunk. It's painted white. Like the bunk is painted like an off-white color, and the toilet is painted porcelain. I thought it was porcelain when I first got in there, but it's not. It's just steel with this like white coat of paint that looks just like porcelain all over it. So I look in the cell, you know, it's a white, like I'll show you a picture. The cell is just white, whatever. And there's the steel desk at the back, the steel stool at the back, the porcelain looking toilet, and the bunk. And I take the bags. I start grabbing my bags out of the cart and I'm putting it on the bunk. When I go to grab my second bag, Dave Weichel's walking across the block. I just noticed him coming straight towards me, and he walks over to me. He shakes my hand. He's like, "Hey, what's going on, young buck?" And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "My name's Dave." He's like, "What's your name?" "My name's Matt," I said. He's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "What are you in here for? You're not in here for anything weird, huh?" And I'm like, "Nope." And you know, I showed him my record and shit, and he's like, "All right, cool, man." He's like, "Come with me." And so I follow him. I go to his cell. What I noticed about his cell is like his bed was literally like so tightly made. There was not a wrinkle in his entire bed. His whole cell was in mint condition. He had the old school radios, the old TVs, like all this stuff that an old school convict would have, like all that grandfathered material, all these things that you don't get anymore. He had all that shit. You know, he had artwork on the walls. He had a nice cell. And I'm like, damn, you know, the dude's been around for a little while, obviously, man. He's established. So he's like, "Hey, come in." So he hands me a radio. And I'm like, "All right, word, cool, thank you." And so I take the radio, and he's like, "Just make sure I get it back. If you get lugged or if you're going to leave or something like that, make sure you get it back to me." And I said, "No doubt, absolutely." And so I take the radio back to my cell. I don't have headphones to listen to it. And he actually did tell me, like, I'm going to need headphones for it. So the next person I met, he came and introduced himself to me himself, was Jody Shay. He's a good dude from Lynn, been in Georgia prison, been all around. He's the guy that actually Danny Brunel ended up, you know, knocking out over the TV show. That doesn't reflect on him in any type of way. He's a serious dude, bro. Big guy from Lynn. You know, he had told me stories too in the past about him being on the chain gang and shit, but that's besides the point. Dave, you know, I got Dave's radio. Jody calls me over and he's like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" He's like, "You need anything?" I'm like, "I could use some coffee and some headphones if you got them." He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, bro." So he gives me a pair of headphones. They're a pair of CL20s. Now, if you've been in the Max or if you've been upstate, you know CL20s are gold because they don't sell them anymore. And the magnets, each magnet's worth $50 once you take it out of the headphones, because those magnets make the best speakers in the Max. They bump. Those headphones are like, you know, they're big headphones. If you do take the magnet out and if you do break them, right, you could just snap them back together and send them into the company and you'll get a brand new pair in return. And that's why they stopped selling them, is because everybody was breaking them, making speakers, and then using the return policy and getting a brand new pair back. So they're like, fuck that, you know? And so they stopped selling them. So I have his CL20s. One night I get drunk and I spill them on the headphones, bro, right? So somebody comes over to me and they're like, "Damn, bro, those Dave's headphones." I said, "No, those are Jody's." Like, you get it on his thing. They're like, "Watch out, bro, because you know, that dude's known to be a chicken hawk." And I'm like, "A chicken hawk? What the fuck is that?" They're like, "Yo, you know, he likes them boys." And I'm like, "The fuck out of here, bro. You'd have to kill me, bro. I don't give a shit. I'm keeping that radio, bro. I'm not giving it back to him because you're saying that he might take my buns, bro. Like, I don't give a shit, you know?" And not for nothing, I don't see him doing that, dude. No, I don't see nobody doing that. You'd really, like I'm saying, like, you really would have to incapacitate me or kill me, which I'm sure the right amount of people or the right person could probably do. God forbid, man. Whew. But I feel bad for anybody who's ever gone through something like that. But, well, I'll give you the definition of a chicken hawk. Chicken hawks, an older convict who targets younger convicts for sexual favors. And oftentimes they'll give them something and then, you know, call them on a return favor, which is why they kind of warned me, because I got the radio. And now they're telling me, like, because he let you use the radio, you might get you know, he might try to come on to you. And I'm like, man, I dare, mother. I'm like, whatever, right? Fast forward, I end up getting lugged. I end up fighting the move team. I don't remember if I ever gave him his radio back, but I don't remember ever hearing anything of it either. So I think I must have got his radio back at some point. I got someone else's or something, right? But I ended up getting lugged for a move team. Fast forward for a little bit, right? The next time I see Dave Weichel is downstairs in the privilege blocks, right? So a bunch of time goes by. I don't see Dave for a little while. I end up getting sent to the south side of the prison. I was hanging out with Kevin Kelly and all the Southie guys, which is really Dave Weichel's homeboys. And about that real quick, as a little interlude, Dave Weichel was from South Boston. South Boston had major smoke with the Boyos and people from Worcester, Charlestown, and anybody who rode with the Charlestown table, right? So Charlestown, Worcester, they hang tough together. So if you're from Somerville, Worcester, Charlestown, that area, a lot of those guys will roll with the Charlestown guys, and the Boyos, they had sympathies towards us. But the Southie guys, man, those dudes were, they hung tough together. A lot of Cambridge guys were split in half, like Bubba Good and all them. They hung with the Southie guys. And I'm sure there's been, plenty of other Cambridge dudes that hang with Southie guys and shit. But that block's a whole different world. It's the Southie world. Great story, man. Them guys are, they're different over there. Different type of dudes, bro. Anyways, Dave Weichel was a South Boston gangster, bro. For some reason, he did not get mixed up in that beef between the Charlestown guys and the Southie guys. So he was able to just chill on his block and not go anywhere. And he had no issues, right? He was one of those guys. He was the outliers, dude. There wasn't many of them either. I'm telling you, like Sully, who was a Boyo himself, Burger, Big Burger. There was only a couple of dudes from Southie that I know that really went over there and, were good while this was all still heated up, because that Southie Charlestown beef had pretty much only happened a couple of years prior. Now it's deaded all the way pretty much, right? None of them guys are around anymore. I see Dave down there. They moved me into the cell with this kid, Dave Agneta. Now, anybody who's been to the Max knows Dave Agneta is the master blade cutter. This dude can cut a knife like nobody I've ever seen before. Polished steel, polished handles with clovers polished into them, like Celtic knotwork into it. Like this dude was on a whole nother level of making, really, really quality bangers. So they moved me in the cell with him. He's got a radio receiver. They had just started selling them. You could bump your speaker through it. Like it was a good cell, clean. It smelled good, like dial soap. It was clean. I didn't mind it. So I moved in there. And this is the first time that I had been in a privilege block my entire sentence. And the only reason I was down there, I had just knocked out the Skinner Raymond Gendrew, and I had threatened the superintendent that if he keeps on sticking me in L2 and leaving me there, that I was going to keep on, displaying the same type of behavior, knocking dudes out until they don't put me there no more, because that block is a disciplinary detention unit. And they basically, what they do is they get over on you by putting you in the hole and then putting you on a detention unit, which is basically the whole in population. And by doing that, they get extra whole time out of you. So I would do my whole time, then they'd stick me down there for 3 months. So instead of doing that, I'm just knocking out somebody suspect and I'm getting the fuck out of there, bro. And like doing a good job at it too, because I'm not fucking around, bro. So I just did one. They put me back, and I told McDonald's, I said, get me the fuck out of here, man. This is crazy. Like I need some type of give me something that I want to lose. You know what I mean? And then maybe I'll behave. And he did, bro. He sent me down to P1, which is the privilege unit. And I moved in with Agneta. My buddy CJ was down there. Shout out to CJ, another Cambridge cat, bro. Really good dude. Him and Jesse Doherty ended up taking the block hostage in P1 before they made it a privilege unit. And this was during the double bunking riots. And now they had already double bunked the unit. Remember, I told you when I first got there was no double cells. Now the whole place is doubled up on the bottom tier. The whole bottom tiers are all doubled up. They made this unit a privilege unit, like I said, and you get rec all day. Pretty much you never really miss your yard and gym movement, because the block doesn't get locked down like that unless the camp's locked down or on modified lockdown. In that case, you wouldn't. Anyways, I'm over there chilling one day with CJ. We're in the cell, and it's the summertime. So the rec deck doors open. CJ's in the handicap cell all the way up at the beginning of the block on the rec deck side. So we were standing out in front of his door, catching the nice summer breeze coming in off the rec deck, drinking our coffee. We were about to just go out in the rec deck and stand there and drink the coffee. And we were on P1 so we could look out over the yard and see, the grass and the trees and the sky and the air. And it was great. We're standing there and we're looking, and CJ goes, yo, do you see that? And I'm like, see what? And I look over and we look up, and Dave Weichel's cell was on the top tier all the way at the end, right over the desk. And he had a curtain up. And underneath the curtain, you can see two sets of bare legs and bare feet, right? Now, I could see Dave Weichel's legs up to his underwear because he's sitting on his bunk. So I could see the bottom half. And he does have one pair of state-issued underwear on. No t-shirt, nothing like that, just the state-issued underwear. And then he's got this kid Sticks doing his dishes in his underwear. Now he's cleaning Dave's dishes. They had just eaten a meal and I'd seen them eating together. And they went up in the cell, closed the curtain, whatever. And a lot of people do shit like that. They close the curtain with privacy. They're not doing nothing suspect like we had just talked about in this last video. They're just in their cell chilling, smoking K2 or fucking sniffing Suboxones or drinking or just in there conversing and chilling and not wanting to have everybody looking up in your cell every time they walk by when they see a movement or something like that, right? You could be doing, point is it's your business when that curtain's shut, like mind your business, right? But because he was on the top tier and we're looking up underneath and you see like two sets of bare legs and bare feet. This dude, you can see his arms coming out of the curtain because the curtain stops about right here at the door and the sink's over here and you can see his arms and he's washing the dishes. He's washing the dishes after they ate and shit, right? Now I could see like, yeah, he cooked for him. So now it's his turn to wash the dishes. But why are you doing it in your underwear with no socks or shoes on and no shirt on? I don't know, right? But that's just one of the things I seen. I never seen any intercourse of any type. I never seen anything to back up any factual basis of him being an actual chicken hawk, just the good old rumors and the, you know, there was a few people like shout out to my man Sweeney, bro. Used to hang out with Davey all the time. And Dave used to come out on the block. P1, sorry, it was P1 in 2016 when we were all down there. It was me, Billy Gilmet, Sweeney, and a bunch of other people. But he used to come out every morning and he go, Sween doggy, Sween doggy. He's like, it's time for handball. And they go out in the fucking rec deck every morning and play a little game of handball and shit. But I used to get on him so bad. It was hilarious, man. And it was just funny how he would come out in the morning and every morning and be like, Sween doggy. And you know, Dave's just one of them characters. He's got that like attitude about him where he has that type of ability to do this shit and be accepted. And it's just funny. You know what I mean? It's comical. Dave, I end up getting moved out of P1. I end up getting to a fight with a CO, matter of fact, in the hallway. The day we did Christmas pictures, the CO was in the hallways walking by, said something about my boy was telling me, look out, the CO's behind you because I was talking about pills to him in the med line. And I look around, I told him, I said, don't worry, my boy already went in the cell with him and beat him up. Matter of fact, that's a good story to tell at some point. I'll do that in a live. Remind me to do that if you want to hear the story about the CO who took his gear off and went in the cell and fought my boy Drew. He stops when I say that. And I'm like, what's up? And I flinch at him. Bro, dude gets scared, so he knocks his hat off, like flinches, and he reaches up, knocks his hat off. So he gets right up in my face and shit. I mushed him. I'm like, yo, wait till you do a round and come in my cell. Like, we're out here in the hallway. No other COs had seen it yet, but he's a CO. So I'm like, yo, wait till you do a round and come in my cell, bro. Don't do some stupid shit out here in the hallway. If you're gonna fucking do something right. You know what I mean? And he looks at me for a few minutes. He's chest to chest with me, looking me in my eyes and shit. And I'm like, yo, if you push me any further, we're right here. The CO right at the desk is gonna see us. And he goes, pushes me with his chest. And he punches me. This dude over here at the desk immediately looks over. It says something, and the med cop who's doing meds looks over like that. And boom, it's over. So I put my hands up. And he starts hitting me. Nah, this shit was doing no damage. I literally let this dude hit me because I was going home in less than a year. I had already gotten on and afters a couple times. And anybody who says, yeah, well, I would have smashed him out. Fuck that. He hit me first, bro, right? Man, when you're in that situation, you want to go home. You don't know what you're going to do, bro. I figured if there was no other COs around, I'd probably smash him out. But there was other COs now looking at the situation anyways, right? So I ended up getting lugged out of there. Things started getting heated up, right? So Jerry Sullivan and Dave start having arguments on the rec deck, through the yard, sending kites back and forth, some heated words, the B word, punk word, just a lot of serious fighting words are going back and forth. Now Dave's on site with all of us, right? He's got to get taken out. What happens is, they signed this kid. I'm not going to put his name out there because he's trying to help his life out right now. So we signed Earl up to go up there and take care of him. So now Boo Boo approaches me, and I don't know what's going to go on yet. I'm not a boyo yet, but and guys hadn't introduced me to some of the guys. So I was like, I'm still young. Guys weren't telling me everything yet, right? I was in P2. They come over to my door and they're like, yo, Maddie, Dave is downstairs in P1. we're sending him to church to see him at church. Dave goes to church every Sunday, right? So they're gonna send a girl to church to see him, and we don't, I don't know if he can take him, but I know you can take him. Like, can you go up there and help him out, or at least just make sure he doesn't get crushed? And I'm like, you know what? I got you, bro. I'll do that shit. You know what I mean? I got you. It was nothing against Dave. It was just, these were my friends, and dudes needed me to do something. The reason why they couldn't do anything is because they had every single STG on the books boyo on the no-fly zone. They couldn't go to church or programs, nothing. Like, we couldn't go anywhere because we were getting into it with all these, Southie dudes. And that was when they first moved Walpole over with the double bunks, and all the Southie guys were, intermingling, and we were seeing each other in OU, and they didn't know who was who yet. So there was a lot of madness going on, a lot of fights going on between the Southie Boyo guys still happened. They couldn't go to church, but I was not on the list. I was not STG yet. I could go anywhere I wanted. So they asked me if I could go up to church to do this. I was like, okay, yeah. And so when I remember church being in the morning, but maybe it was the day before we were talking about this. Maybe it was Saturday night or Saturday morning or something. And dudes, we were walking around the yard, and guys told me, like, look, this is the deal. Tomorrow, this is supposed to happen. We can't have it happen because now the administration's coming down on Jerry, and they're telling Jerry that if anything happens, they're going to ship him out of state to a different state. So I'm like, damn, bro, I'll leave it alone. The way I see it now is, fucking thank God, right? Fuck it. I don't want to have to do anything I don't need to do, right? I had nothing against Dave. Dave's actually a good dude, and I ended up being good friends with him later on in life. Anyways, right? Dave ends up getting moved up to N2 at some point. When you're in there, you're doing your bid, you get lugged, you get moved around different blocks, but all in the same quay, right? So I'm not over there. I'm in the STP when this is all going down. My friend Nick is down there. My friend Shavink's down there. I think Stevie Morello was down there. A few other guys, like heavy hitters, were down there, right? Frank and Dave. So Huggy Bear. I'm going to tell you a little something about Huggy Bear. Huggy Bear's, he's done Fed time. He's been all over the state. He will take your buns. This dude was a savage, bro, right? One day we were playing basketball out in the court. This kid was boxing him out, and he was giving him a little too much box. And, next thing you know, yeah, Frank Huggy Bear is freaking rock solid, and he's like, what's up, man? You're rubbing all up on me. He's like, what do you expect, right? Huggy Bear, right? This dude, I was his neighbor in the hole. He's the type of guy who woke up before breakfast every single morning and would be working out, and I could hear him looking in the mirror telling himself, ooh, you sexy. Ooh, you sexy motherfucker. Ooh, you bad motherfucker. Ooh. And I'm over there, and I'm like, damn, Frank. I'm like, what's going on over there? Can you make love to yourself or something? And he's like, ooh, yeah. He's like, Frank, you's a sexy motherfucker. He talks to himself and shit. Bro, that shit was so fucking crazy, right? But then when the COs would get to his door for chow, he'd make them give him 2 trays, and they would give him 2 trays every single meal. Huggy Bear, Frank Huggins, man, this dude just had it like that, bro. He was one of them guys that commanded respect and got it, bro, right? Anyway, so Frankie, Huggy Bear, Huggins, and Dave Weichel end up having serious words with each other, right? Racist stuff. Dave doesn't like the way Frank talks. Frank is a racist person. He does say racist stuff. And that's a topic that I could never really understand. So Frank would talk derogatively about white people, but also white people talk derogatively about black people openly as well. And it goes. So, but I just always felt a certain type of way about it because he would just do it so openly, like, yeah, it is cracker, bitch. No, nothing against you, Maddie, man. He's not everybody's a cracker, but like he would just talk like that. Like, and he had this like very racist thing. He was an older black guy, very big dude, bro. I watched this dude get hopped on by 4 different guys in M1, the orientation unit, and scrape every one of them, bro. Like, this dude, he was a savage. He went in there, this kid wouldn't let him borrow his TV. He took his TV and smashed it over the kid's head, bro. Beat him mercilessly. And word is, yeah, grease those wheels for him too, which is something I couldn't even imagine, dude. Oh my Lord. They're saying Huggy Bear has AIDS and has given it to guys like, I'm just going to say BP. He used to do the deuce. He's from Worcester. He's passed away now. The word is is the Deuce guy, BP, the one I had in a headlock. He got his buns taken by Huggy Bear, bro. And that's the reason why he sent those dudes after him. You know, Huggy Bear took his TV too. He was a bully. He would take people's shit. He would take canteen. If he thought you were weak and he could get away with it, even if he didn't, man, I think he would do it anyway. Like he would push. And if you let him, he would go all the way, right? So you had to be stern with Frank. I was always very cut and dry, very stern with Frank. He respected me and liked me as like a friend almost. I was with him for so long. So, you know, these dudes end up bumping heads and having serious words. Now, Frank goes up to his cell. Dave goes down and he tells a couple of white dudes, he's like, bro, I'm going to take this guy out. I'm killing him. So he goes to his cell, gets one of those bangers. I think it was, you know, I'm not going to say, I'm just saying he goes down to his cell, grabs the banger, bro, right? I don't know if he had put something over his hand to hide it when he was walking up the stairs, but he walks up the stairs on the left side of the tier, walks all the way down the tier on the left side of the tier, and Frank's cell is all the way in the back of the block on the left-hand side. He walks all the way down the tier to the back of the block, and then next thing, he just dips right in there. From what I hear, next thing you know is you hear the feet squeaking, you can hear serious and you can hear grunts and like aggravated voices, and then pool of blood. A pool of blood just starts pooling out the door, literally pooling out the door. And then when the cops realized kind of what was going on, it was so long after this started. Let me tell you what happened inside that cell. Dave goes in there. He catches Frank at the sink with his hands in the sink. He tries to stab him in the chest, in the heart. Frank sees it, catches the move, and goes to defend himself. Dave's knife hits him in the artery in the arm on the first shot, cuts his artery, severs it directly in half, like a good, solid artery shot in his arm. Frank pulls back, blood's gushing out of his arm. Starts lighting Dave up. Dave's trying to swing. He has nothing for Frank, bro. Frank gets him in between the toilet and the wall and beats him almost to death. He beat him unrecognizable while he was bleeding out and his time was ticking. He's beating him. Boom. The cops finally realized this is going on and locked them in the cell together. They lock the door shut. Frank's in there bleeding out. Dave's incapacitated on the floor, smashed out bad, right? The cops come up when they finally got him. Apparently, when they pulled Frank out of the cell, he was still walking and Dave had to get carried out on a stretcher. But Frank apparently still walked out of that cell looking gray and white. This dude was one of the blackest people I ever seen in my life. This dude had purple lips. I'm talking about, they say he looked gray and white, right? So we end up in DDU together. We get out in the rec yard one day. He tells me the story about what happened when he got out and went home on parole. He went out there. He said he was wearing a red bandana and cut off jean shorts. Somebody else told me they seen him, right? And the jean shorts were shorts. Like he was rocking the whole 80s attire. Like the cut-off shirt, whatever. Like this dude was rocking the whole 80s attire, right? Goes to the projects, Old Harbor housing projects where he used to live, bro. But he walks over there. He walks up to the crowd of kids that are hanging out with the project kids, bro, right? None of these guys know this dude from a hole in the wall. And he goes, yo, he's like, you guys doing anything over here? And they're like, yeah, why? What you need, Pops? He's like, I'm just going to tell you. He's like, what I need, bro, is I need a little piece of everything you guys do because this is my block. He's like, from now on, I want a cut of everything that happens over here. Like on some straight movie shit, right? So the kid steps up and says, oh, yeah, Pops? Knocks him out cold, bro. Leaves him there, laid out. He said, I guess I was too old for the game now, bro, right? He didn't even go back for any more action. From what it says in the things and from what people talk about in Southie now is that he got out and he was talking to everybody about, you know, his stories in prison, just a likable figure, a likable character. His brother was able to get free, but his brother, his co-defendant, he got paid almost $1 million for a lawsuit that he won for a wrongful conviction for being an accomplice to a murder. There's so much more to the story with Dave Weichel, and if I remember any more important stories, I will definitely bring them up. I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe, like, and share. Comment, please. And if you want, you could become a member for $2.99 a month. It's cheap. It's It's not a big commitment, and you can support something real. I appreciate everybody for showing up today. W number. Ow!